Hello, it's Jayska from A Diamond and the Sticks YouTube channel. And I figured I'd do a really fast video. As you can see, that's my feet. I'm out here in the backyard. I'm walking in the pond, on the pond. Hopefully I won't fall through. I'm not going to go out real far, but I'm just going to try to show you a little bit that the pond is frozen over. And here I am. I'm walking on it. So I just wanted to show you a really fast YouTube video. There's other people that's already been walking out on the pond. So I know if it can handle them, it can handle me. But as you can see, there's other people that's already been walking on it. These are the ponds right here, and they're frozen over. Right over here next to this deck is the deepest spot of the pond. It's about, or it used to be whenever they first had this dug out, probably close to some 30 some years ago now, when they had this dug out the last time. It was like about 10 feet deep right there in front of that basketball goal there on the pond. And that used to be the deepest spot, right through there in the middle, across from that basketball goal. And then I'll walk out here a little bit and show you. But you can see people's already been walking on it. So I know it's been frozen for at least 10 to 12 days, cold enough, frozen enough. And then there's two other ponds back that way. But yeah, the pond is frozen over. And I'm walking across the pond. As you can see, that's my feet, that's my pajama bottoms. And it's frozen over there. So yeah, it's been frozen over long enough that it's cool enough. Usually around the sides and the edges of the pond, it's not but like 2, 3, 4 feet. A lot of debris, mud and rocks and stuff get in the pond over the years, wash into it. And so that's definitely me. That's my legs, my shirt I'm wearing. And you can see the dogs have been walking on the pond. So I just figured I'd do a really fast video showing you of me walking across the pond here. Walking on the pond. There's my feet. It's really slippery. Other people's been walking on it too. And there's 2 more ponds in that direction. That's the neighbor's pond over there, and then the other neighbor's pond over there. And you can see on the hillside up there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the waterfalls are still frozen over. And I'll walk back out this direction. You can see there with my feet. It's where the pond is frozen over. Ice underneath. And the dogs have been getting out here. That's the house that I grew up in. That belongs to my parents. Right now it belongs to my dad. He lives alone. My mom, she lives over there. Mother dearest. And then over here, you can see up above there, there's some waterfalls that's been frozen over. And I won't get too close because we're not speaking right now. And I don't plan on ever speaking to them again for the rest of my life. I don't care. I don't ever plan on speaking to them. But you can see underneath there, I'll get a little bit closer, not much. Right there is where the ice water is underneath the pond. And so, and then there's a barn. My grandpa built that barn. And up above that barn, I don't know if you can tell it or not. Might have to get out here in a different position. But up there is a cave. This was my dad's house when he was alive. It's now my uncle, my dad's brother's house. And my grandmother, I'm too scared to walk out there in places that hasn't been tracked. I'll stay next to the edge because I just don't know. I don't feel safe. Anyways, I'll get back off this pond and just show you from the side of the bank here. See, I was out there on the pond. I was walking out there. Anyways, over here, above this barn, there is a cave. And whenever I was growing up, there used to be, it went back, let me see if I can scan in closer. Up there, you can see it. It goes back in the mountain about 3 feet deep. And we would just, me and my sibling, my brother, we used to play on inside that cave when we were children. And in a few of those trees next to that cave, when I was growing up, my dad used to work in the coal mine, so I guess you could call me back then a coal miner's daughter. Anyways, my dad would take railroad ties, it's cold out here and I'm not dressed, but anyways, he would take railroad ties and nail them to the tops, or nail them to the trees and make steps out of them so we could climb up really high in like 2 or 3 of those trees next to that cave and look over the hillside. And it was really fun whenever I was a child. You could see out really far, and it went really, really high up too, almost to the top. And as you can see that right there, that's a marker for the property line between me and my uncle, my dad's brother. And whenever my grandmother that had, and it goes pretty much, that marker, land marker goes straight across property line to the tree line over there next to the railroad tracks. But anyways, back whenever I was, or when my dad was younger, and my grandmother had my dad and my uncle, she had my dad whenever she was 40 years old, and then she had my uncle when she was 41 years old. So she had them really late in life, her children, off of with my grandpa that used to live in that house there, and then my uncle lives in it now. Since he passed away back whenever I was like in the 8th grade, so it was a long time ago. I think he was like, see the dogs walking across the pond, on the ice in the pond. Let me see if I can scan it closer. That's the neighbor's dog. Anyways, yeah, I think he passed away when he was like 81 years old. And honestly, from what little information I could tell y'all about this land and stuff, this land here that I live on, it's in the Jeremiah area of Kentucky, but it's called Black Bottom, and I live on what's called Black Bottom Road. Anyways, the reason why they call it Black Bottom is because back, I don't know how many years ago, I'm sure it was a long time ago, but people used to have all this land here on Black Bottom Road, and it's flat, swampy land is what you would call it. I'm gonna go really slow because it's so slippery right through here, and I've already about fell one time. But anyways, the land and stuff, I think it mostly, I could be wrong, but like I said, from what little information I know about things, I think that it belonged to my grandpa and his family. There's some icicles, and I guess they used it as farmland. And when they were in, I guess, the spring or fall, when I don't really know how it works, but anyways, when they were trying to burn off their gardens, I guess to clean them up, and stuff for the year or whatever. I guess it would be in the fall. I mean, they caught on fire, and the fields and stuff. This all used to be fields and stuff right through here. Anyways, it caught on fire, and it turned everything black, obviously. And I guess that's one reason why they call this place Black Bottom Road. But you can see the snow's melting off the road and stuff up through there. But at one point in time, from what I've heard, let me walk out here on the road. There's somebody walking. I'll try not to film them. Anyways, what I heard is at one point in time, I think there's some in the sky. There's some birds, some plane lines. I don't think those are chemtrails. I think those are plane lines. Anyways, from what I heard, I think my grandpa, my dad's dad, and my uncle's dad, and they do have some sisters who are half sisters to them from their mother. Anyways, they used to, my dad's dad, I think his family, and I could be wrong, but I think his family, they mostly own the majority from like up there, what you would call, when you're turning in on this road, what they call Black Bottom Road, the bridge. I think about in through there, I'm assuming it, but I think that his family owned the majority of probably that area. All them houses used to, like a long, long time ago, like all them houses and the land, it was mostly, like I said, it's flat land. It's mostly like swampy type land. But I think that his family owned pretty much all that land, and then even through here, even till the end of this road down here, where those houses end, he used to own all that. And across that over there, railroad tracks, there's bottoms over there, and I've showed you on a different YouTube video of like what the bottoms is, what my family, or my uncle and my dad, what they own now. But anyways, at one point in time, I could be wrong, but I think it goes back to a person called John Henry Mose Adams, Adams, Adams. And he was I think he was my great-great-grandfather, like 3 times back or whatever. And that would be for me on both sides, because my dad and my mom, I know, typical Kentucky stereotype, but my parents are cousins. They've always claimed that they're 4th cousins, so supposedly it don't count. But who knows why I'm so messed up, but whatever. Anyways, I think it's more like 3rd cousins, because they share that same great-grandfather, that John Henry Mose Adams person, on both sides. And they both spell their names. So my mom, in other words, her maiden last name was Adams before she married an Adams, and it was spelled with the ADAMS. So that set of Adamses. But I'm assuming, I could be wrong, like I said, but I think the John Henry Mose Adams guy, I think he was the one who used to own all pretty much of this area of, this is what we call Higher Black Bottom Road. I'm going to try to step back out here, see if I can get back out on the pond on the ice without falling in. There's been all kinds of people who's fell in this pond before too when it's been frozen over. And we've had actually people, when we was growing up, they fell right there in the corners too. Had to get them out. But anyways, yeah, I think that John Henry Mose Adams guy used to own, I could be wrong, like I said, but I think that he used to own most of this Black Bottom Road area, the upper part. There's an upper and there's a lower, and the lower's way past that hill. I drove past there on a different video, but that's the lower part of Black Bottom Road. This is the upper part. There's only like, I don't know, 15, 20 houses on the upper. I'm not really sure. And anyways, so I think, and I don't know what that guy would have been to my grandpa. I guess it would have been his grandpa too. I don't know. I don't know how genetics and ancestry and all that works myself. I'm just not really big into it. Now my dad is, and I had an aunt. She was too. That was one of my dad's half sisters. Her name was Joy, and she was really big time. She did early in like the early 80s and 90s, or late 80s, 90s or whatever. She used to, when computers started coming out for homes or whatever, she used to do a whole lot of ancestry and stuff for people, just random people trying to figure out their ancestors and stuff. So she was big time into it. And then my dad started getting into it probably about a few years back that I know of, before me and him stopped talking to each other, or I stopped talking to him or whatever. But anyways, so I think my grandpa, what happened, and he had siblings, he had brothers, he had sisters, and what happened is he must have took care of and did a lot of work for one of the grandfathers that used to own all the properties, and I don't know who the guy is. There's some airplanes. I don't know if you can see them or not. Try to scroll into them. There's some airplanes. Wonder where everybody's flying to. That's what I always want to know. Anyways, though, he used to take care, I guess, of one of the grandfathers for him, or one of his kin, before his kin passed away. And so I think that's why my grandfather, his name was Orville, obviously Adams, and people around this community, or this part of Letcher County, mostly around the Isom area, people used to call him Dad. And he would always go around wearing white shirts, like uniform looking shirts, and always would have like black pants on, and he would have in the corner of his t-shirt, before it was even popular, and he would have Dad wrote in the corner of his t-shirt. And he was a real heavy set man, and he was real big into politics, and he was a firm believing Republican. And whenever we was growing up, we always used to buy him like trinket elephants and stuff. That's what he wanted, because that represents his political party. But anyways, I guess after generations and people started passing away, my grandfather, Orville Adams, he ended up with this area right through here. But before that, and this was before I was born, he used to live over in the bottom. I'll try to walk out there. It might take me a few minutes though. But he used to live over in the bottom. And he had a first wife before his second wife, which is my dad's mother. And then obviously they divorced. They did not have no children together or nothing. And then my dad's dad, my grandpa Orville, I think a lot of the other brothers, I don't know how many there was. Like I said, I don't really know too much. I'm just telling you what I think I know, or what I think I've heard over the years about things. But I think he was the main one. That he mostly got the majority of the property that was here on Black Bottom. And I'm sure in my family's history. It's both, like I said, on my dad's side and my mom's side, because at some point they were cousins and they shared the same great-grandfather that, or I guess it would have been second time great-grandfather for them, that John Henry Mose Adams guy. But anyways, even though they were different sets of Adamses too. That's my safety tank, my sewer. It really stinks. Anyways, back when my grandpa was alive, from what I've been told, with his first wife, and I hope y'all are able to hear me, and I'm not doing this video for nothing, because the last time I recorded outside in the snow like that, for some reason the sound wasn't picking it, and it was a silent video the whole time. There goes some planes. There's a bird's nest up that tree. Anyways, and then, see, this is Upper Black Bottom, and that road ends down there in the corner. So everything on the left-hand side here is what used to be, I'm assuming what used to be, before they separated out the land, used to be my grandpa's. And I'm walking up here on the railroad tracks here, as you can see. And, anyways, here's the bottom. And here in this lower part of the bottom, my grandpa used to have a house. I'll try to scroll in closer. With a little wooden house that was tore down long before my time. And he had it built with his first wife. And if you see that little white and red house there, and the other house is next to it, the big wooden house, that used to be his land too, but his second wife by marriage, her name was Dorothy. She had daughters. I think she had 4 daughters altogether, and with her first husband. And she was from Carlisle, Kentucky, and that's really, really close to Cynthiana, Kentucky. They use this land right now for farmland in the summertime. You see it's next to the creek over there. Let's go in, see the creek. Up above there, right there in that corner, that's other people, like the Whitakers, the Blairs. That's their family's land, and it's separated into like all kinds of people, so that land will never be bought. It will never be separated, because there's too many people that has ties to that land. So anyways, and then at one point of this, like up at the upper part, my uncle owns a piece, and then up above him, one of the other neighbors owns a piece. Then it starts separating into like 4 or 5 different families. Anyways, this right here, this about right here in front of my house, if you can see, is straight across the railroad tracks. They don't use but just to that point in farmland for gardening and stuff, because in the flood of July of 2022, this whole place got flooded out on this side of the railroad tracks. The water was pretty much maybe about 3 feet away from right here, and it looked like an ocean flowing. It was flowing fast. If you had got stuck in it, it had currents and you would have got killed. But anyways, on this side of the railroad tracks during that flood. And then if you had turned around, the flood waters came up all the way up here. Well, it had came up here all the way, and it circled around my house, and it probably stopped about right at that bush in my front yard. But my whole yard looked like a lake, but it wasn't touching my house. The water wasn't touching my house. I guess because the front of my yard there is kind of built on a slope. It has a little bit of a hillside to it, but it was touching right there on the side of the house. Only though about 2 feet up on them blocks. And in my backyard and the other side of the yard, it wasn't touching. I probably had about a 3 foot distant ring out circling my house during that time. Now my neighbor's yards over here, especially this brown house here, that was covered up. It looked like a lake during that time, and it got, I'm assuming it probably got in the underpinning and stuff of their house. And then in the other house down here, the little white house with the black roof, and the little brown wooden house, it used to be a trailer, they built onto it. And I'm kin to all these people in some shape or form, whether it's distantly or not. The ones that live in the white house and the wooden house down there, that's on my dad's side. But anyways, back during that flood, it got inside of that house right there, the white house. It was probably about, I think they said it was at least 8 feet tall in that house, because the people who were renting that house at the time said that the old woman who was renting it and living in it, this is what railroad ties look like. There's always railroad ties out here loose, which are frozen right now. But anyways, here's another one. And sorry, I'm just like ADHD or whatever whenever it comes to my personality. If anything catches my interest, lose interest or whatever, ramble on about nothing. But I'm like squirrel. But anyways, so whenever those people who were renting that house, and this happened at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was blind. She's a blind woman, and so when she woke up, she said she reached her feet off of the bed. I don't have to go in. I'm freezing to death and I want to get frostbite. Anyways, she reached her feet off the bed, and she said all she felt was water, and so she had to climb out of the water in there whenever she was renting that house and staying in that. And then the other person who lives in the brown house, the whole time during the flood, he was laying in his bed sleeping through it all, and he was just waiting on the waters to go down before he would come out of his house. So it took like a day almost for the waters to come out, and there was all kinds of debris, wood that came up from my neighbors. I'm trying not to fall as I go down this railroad tracks. And there was even oil cans that was in the waters. I was walking through it too, just being nosy and looking around after I realized it had flooded. But anyways, I'll talk about that on a different day. The water on this side of the railroad tracks, for reference though, it was probably about right up to where that sign is that says west, or for the whistle to blow on the train, and straight across the yard. But some way or another, it was cut off right here, like pretty much around that circle ring of my septic tank. And I'm gonna have to walk inside the house because I'm freezing to death to finish telling you this story. But anyways, so I think what happened, now I'm assuming all this, but I think my grandpa, his family, of course, whenever they started getting married and all of them started having children, well, with his first wife, like I said, he did not have no children. So he ended up divorcing her, from my understanding, and then that's when he moved into the house that my uncle is in now. But so like his family, whether they were distant or not, they started having children, I guess, before him. Because like I said, my grandma, or granny, Dorothy, his wife, his second wife, the one that had my dad and my uncle, she was 40 when she had my dad, and she was 41 whenever she had my uncle. So she had my dad and my uncle, what's considered probably back then way later on in life, which now I think people, I'm gonna have to go in, I'm freezing to death, but I think nowadays people are kind of going back to that. So they're kind of going back to having their children, in other words, later on in life and stuff. I'm gonna go in here and sit in the bed and finish telling you all this story. Sorry it's taking forever. I get off subject all kinds of times. And I'm out of breath. Froze to death. Look at my fingers and my hands. Hope I don't get frostbite. Anyways, so let me try to find the remote. Where you at, Puffy? Puffy, are you on the remote? Gotta find the remote so you don't hear it on TV. It's so cold out there. Anyways, so my grandpa started helping out family members and pretty much just like selling them pieces of land, I'm assuming, or giving them pieces of land, I guess, trying to help them out so they could have their families and stuff and have a place to live. And also, like, by the time he had his stepdaughters from his second wife, she had already had her children, her daughters. There was, I think, 4 of them. There was Nell, there was Joy, there was Edith, and there was Judy, and I think that's all of them. Anyways, of the girls. She had already had them, and they were already teenagers by the time that they had moved here to Eastern Kentucky. And the way that my grandfather and his wife Dorothy met, his second wife, my dad's mom, I think there was some kind of war going on, and I don't know where it was located, but they were making weapons for the war that was going on, is what I've always heard, but I could be wrong. And that's how they met. They met at a factory making the weapons for war at some place in Kentucky, but I don't know where it was located. I just know that originally Dorothy was married to, I think, a German man, and I don't know his name, but he was from, I think she was from Carlisle, Kentucky, or that's where they lived at whenever they got married and they had their daughters together. My dad's half sisters. And so, anyways, back to my grandpa and him separating the land. I think he owned most of it. And then, hi Earl Grey, hey buddy. Anyways, one of Dorothy's daughters, I think it was her oldest daughter, Joy, she was the one probably who got married first and started having children first, and she needed a place to live. So I've showed it to you before, but in this video, or I've showed it to you in a different video, there's like a big red wooden looking house down the road from here on Black Bottom Road. That's where Joy's daughter used to live. Anyways, and in between it, there used to sit a brick house. Well, Joy, she designed her brick house, and she had it built, and it used to be in between the wooden red house and the white wooden house with the red roof before the flood came in July of 22, and it got flooded out and had to be torn down. It was destroyed. But anyways, so I'm assuming my grandpa Orville, now I don't know this for sure, but this is Earl Grey. This is my daughter's cat, but I've been keeping it ever since it started snowing. So he's a really good boy. Anyways, my grandpa probably gave Joy or sold Joy and her husband a piece of land for them to build that house on. So that's one of the ways that it got separated. And then I guess next to it, all that land next to it, I guess Joy pretty much bought out. And then she separated it later on in the years to her children, one of her children, or 2 or 3 of her children actually, 2 of her sons and 1 of her daughters. And then across from it, the wooden house that got flooded out, and then the white wooden house with the black roof that got flooded out back in the flood of July 22. Excuse me, my nose is running now. Anyways, my grandpa had a brother, and I don't know what his brother was. I don't really know, so I won't say for sure, because like I said, I'm not really that knowledgeable when it comes to ancestry and stuff, and how family relations work out and stuff. I've always been the black sheep in my family, so to speak. But anyways, my one of my grandpa's relatives, he either already had that land, or my grandpa must have sold or gave that land to him. And so, in other words, all that land through there, some way or another, is tied to a different side of my grandpa's family. And then over there in that single wide trailer that's next to my dad's brick house, in the house that I grew up in, that used to belong, well, it actually used to belong to two different families. At one point in time, it belonged to the Frasers, and then at another point in time, it belonged to a different set of Adamses. But that land, the land is so separated and unusual around here, and land causes a lot of arguments and fights and controversy here in eastern Kentucky. If you know, you know. Anyways, that front yard of that land doesn't belong to my mom, but my dad did buy that trailer back in 2021 off of the children who the trailer used to belong to. Um, he bought it, I think, for like $19,000 or $20,000. I don't remember. I'm not sure. But anyways, their children had already had lives and houses and stuff elsewhere, so they moved off from here. But before that, it used to, at one point in time, it used to belong in some way next to my other set of neighbors over here next door that live in the wooden house that their yard looked like a lake, and who the other pond belongs to, the middle pond. It used to belong to their mom, and I was really good friends with her when she was alive. I thought a lot about her, and I considered her like a best friend to me. She was an older woman, and her name was Maddie Jean, and everybody in Letcher County probably knew Maddie Jean. She was a real talkative, outspoken, outgoing woman, and she loved to play bingo all the time in her younger days. But anyways, in all that I've ever known, she always lived next door to me in that wooden house, and she would sit outside on her porch all the time. And then since she's passed away, she's gave her land to her children, and so that's who my neighbors are now. But before that, I think maybe at one point in time, one of my aunts, my dad's half sisters, I think it was Edith, and maybe Edith's first husband. I'm not really sure. Don't quote me. But I think that they probably lived over there first before it got separated to the Frasers, and then to the Adamses, or then back to the Frasers or whatever. But it's in the Frasers. It's the Frasers who own it now. And so that's how that got separated. I mean, they had children, and I guess my grandpa was just trying to help out people. And I'm pretty sure, too, at one point in time with that land over there. Now, I'm not that close kin to him. I'm sure I'm distantly kin to him, but like the Frasers and stuff. And at one point in time, I had an aunt, or a cousin actually, even though she was a lot older than what I was at the time. Her name was Virginia, and her husband, his name was Paris, and they were more close to kin in a different way, because I think the Frasers, the way it works around here, is the Frasers and the Isons are closer to kin to each other. And most of the Isons have family reunions and have land ties to out Isom in Kentucky. And Isom, Kentucky's just like a mile up the road from where I live at right now, away from me. But anyways, I think at one point in time, before even the Frasers had it, Virginia, my cousin on my dad's side, and her husband Paris, they used to live in that land over there first. But I could be wrong. No, don't quote me. But anyways, that's how it got. And then they started having kids and they moved away. I know for the longest time, even before it was cool, this was a long time ago because I'm 43 years old. I know I always loved Virginia and Paris. They had the best personalities. They were such a good couple. And it's such a sweet, sweet, sweet people. Him and her both. And I loved it. Because I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s or whatever. And Virginia and Paris, when they would come in, I'm sure after they had children, they used to have this big, huge, I think it was an RV. It could have been like a van, a car van or whatever, a caravan, whatever you call it or whatever. It had a bed in it. I don't really remember. I just remember that they would always travel and come in all the time. They would travel all over the United States, and they had family back when they were alive that lived out in California. But anyways, and so I have like family pretty much all over the United States in some way or shape or form or whatever. But anyways, I just loved when Virginia and Paris would come in. They were such good people. And I remember she loved sweet tea, and I used to love sweet tea too. And she made the best sweet tea. It's just a memory for me. But at one point in time, I'm pretty sure that they own that piece of land that's next door to me too. But like I said, I think my grandpa just started separating the land and stuff because he was in some way kin to people, and people started having children, and so and I guess he felt sorry for them. No, I could be wrong. He might not have didn't own it all in the beginning. I don't know. It's just the way I interpret it, and I'm assuming things from what I've been told or what I've assumed things or whatever over my lifetime or whatever. And then so whenever my dad he got out of high school and he got married to my mom, and they started, well, I think they lived together for 5 years while they were married before they even had children, me and my brother, my sibling. But anyways, I think my grandpa just gave him that piece of land next to the hillside over there, and that's how my dad got that piece of land. And then I know always growing up, and I'm sorry this is such a long video, and I'll probably have to cut it off anyways because I can't film for very long on this phone because it won't allow me to do long videos on this phone for some reason. But anyways, I'm sorry for wasting so much of y'all's time. But whenever my dad got that piece of land or whatever, and there used to be a different piece of land that's up in Blair Branch that my uncle used to live at, his brother. And my grandpa bought that piece of land for my uncle so he would have a place to live at with his family. Well, my uncle's son, he only has one child, and his son, he gave that piece of land, or I don't know, he might have sold it to him. I really don't know. I've never asked. But he gave that piece of land to, I'm assuming he gave that piece of land to my cousin, his only child, his only son, to live on in his family. That's up in Blair Branch. But my uncle lives next door to me in my grandfather's house. And so, and I'm sure, like, I'm not trying to be cruel or nothing. Look at my cat Nacho. Look at his leg where he's disabled. Poor fella. Anyways, and that's Earl Grey next to him eating. Anyways, though, I'm sure at one point in time that, I don't know if it was that John Henry Mose guy or not, Adams, but I'm sure my great-great-grandfather, um, I'm sure that somebody in, well, it would have to be in both of their families. I'm sure somebody had slaves back in the, I guess 100 years ago is when all that happened. I don't know. I don't know my history that well either. I'm not the smartest cookie in the box. But I'm sure somebody had slaves and had all this land and stuff around here. And another thing too about this land, from what I know, like where I said all this is flat land around here and it's like swampy and stuff. Um, I think that they mostly use this areas down here low for their gardening and stuff. Now, my grandpa, after he divorced his first wife and married my grandma Dorothy, or my granny Dorothy, they did have a house built, and it was a brick house, and it's the house that's still over there standing. They had that one built whenever they had my dad and my uncle. And then they always had gardens and stuff from what I know about. But I think, and I could be wrong, but it might have been my grandpa's grandparents that did this, and it might not have been him. But I think that they used like that land over across the railroad tracks as the bottom, and this land here mostly around my grandpa's house that was flat and it was all swampy and stuff back then. I think they used that for their cattle to feed on because it was flat. And then I remember growing up when I was a child, I used to play in the mountains, in the hillsides, used to climb trees, and used to have an imagination and use my imagination and stuff before the internet took over. Long, long time ago. But anyways, I think I ran across it a few times when I was out exploring the hillsides growing up, walking the mountains or whatever when I was a child, probably about, I don't know, I'm just assuming about 10, 11, 12 years old or so. And I would always find these like triangle looking mound things, kind of like miniature little pyramids. And they're probably still up there. And they would just sit on the embankment of the hillsides. And that hillside, even though it don't look it, it's very steep. And there's a lot of cliffs on that hillside. So you have to be real careful. It's really hard to climb. And I couldn't climb it now any days. I'm so out of shape. But anyways, whenever I would go up there and just to hang out and explore or whatever, play in the woods and the hillside until it got nightfall or whatever, until I heard mother calling my name or whatever to come in. It was too dark to play. Sometimes I would stumble across those pyramid mounds, and what they look like is like little pyramids, but they were just built out of rocks, just random little rocks, nothing in particular, nothing. And I think what I was told is the reason why there's so many of those little mounds that look like little pyramids up on the banks on the hillsides and stuff, and they're up high, they're up really, really, really high, is because that's where they would plant their gardens back then. Probably not when my grandpa was older. It was probably like when he was a child, like his parents and grandparents. That's probably what they did for gardens back then. Is I guess like they was clearing off a spot off the hillside to plant their gardens, which I don't know. That just don't make sense to me. But I don't know if it's because we want everything so instant and we're so lazy nowadays or what it is. But anyways, I don't know, it just don't make sense for me. But in other words, they would put their cattle and their horses and stuff like that down here in the valley in the flat part of the lands, like where their house was and across the bottom next to the creek and all that. But it just never did make no sense to me why they would put their gardens and stuff pretty much on the mountain, on the slopes of the mountains, really high up there. You're talking about, I'm assuming, probably at least, I don't know, probably close to 50 or 100 feet up on that hillside, that mountain there. And I mean, it's not a huge mountain, but it's a steep mountain. It's got a lot of cliffs in it. And anyways, that always shocked me or surprised me. I always kind of wondered why they done that. And sorry, I'm hiccuping and burping. I got acid reflux. Sorry. Anyways, though, I've also been heard stories. Now, I'm not that much of a farmer. I've dabbled and experimented here and there over the years, little by little, but not much at all to amount to nothing. And probably about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years or so, my parents, my mom and my dad, they both got interested into the farmer's market around here locally in Letcher County. And so they started planting a garden across the railroad tracks. That's where they do it at now. My parents do, and my aunt and uncle and stuff. Anyways, they raised their gardens over there next to the creek on that property over there. Well, I've been told before that, or I've heard it before, that my uncle and maybe even my dad, I'm not sure, have found like arrowheads, like Indian arrowheads over there in the bottom before in their gardening areas. And then I think it was not too long ago after the flood happened in July of 2022. For some reason, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Like, how did they even know that? There was a group of college students, I think they were from Berea, Kentucky, I could be wrong, but they randomly called one of my parents or somebody, and but we were going to be out of town for some reason during that time, so we didn't even do it. But I think that they were going to come over and like some way dig up them arrowheads, and they said if you wanted to keep them, you could keep them or whatever. But I don't know if they came or went or whatever. I wasn't here, so I don't know. And neither one of my parents was around either at that time, I don't think. I think we were all out of town. So I just think it was interesting that, like, how did they even know about that? How did they even know that this used to be a place where Indians used to pretty much, I think Indians didn't really like live here, but I think they used this land for the same purposes during the spring, summer, and fall months of the year. They would use this as a hunting ground or even like a farming ground. And that's what I've always assumed or been told, anyways. And I know, like, back to my grandpa, when he was alive, this place where my house sits at now, this used to all be his garden. This used to be where he would put his garden out every year and stuff, even right before he passed away. So this is the area that he would use for his garden. But like all around me and next to me, all the other land that there's houses and stuff at now, what I was told about 3 or 4 years ago from my dad is that I guess someone had told him this, I don't know, but I think Indians, I don't know if it was Cherokee or Chickasaw or what it was that used to live around here, but they would come in here, and this is where they would probably pretty much do all their hunting and their gardening, like I said, during the spring, summer, and fall months of the year. And then I think whenever it started getting cold, which this never did make sense to me either, but in a way it kind of does, and I'll tell you that in a second. But anyways, what he told me is like whenever it would get cold in the winter time of the year, the colder months, I guess the Indians would load up and whatever they killed for that year to live off from or preserved or whatever, they would take back with them up to New York, and that's where they would live at, I guess, in their teepees or whatever they had as homes, houses or whatever, up in New York State. I guess New York City, I don't know. But New York State or what New York State. I'm sorry, I can't talk. Anyways, they would go up there for the winter and live out through the winter months. But the rest of the time, they would use these areas here in Kentucky for their hunting, fishing, um, just their gardening and stuff. Whenever, but it never did make no sense to me why they would go up north to a cold area, especially in the winter time, to live out the winter months. But now I have watched that TV show. I can't think of the name of it right now. What is the name of that TV show? And you know what I'm talking about. I can't think of the name of it. I'm brain dead sometimes. But, and this is what makes sense. But in that TV show, I think that guy calls his woman that he loves all the time, she's kind of like a time traveler or whatever. And he's like a Fraser from Scotland. He calls her like Sansa or Surrey. I don't know. Something with his lover or whatever. I love that TV show, but I can't think of the name of it. I have went brain dead. But anyways, whenever they travel overseas to North America, and right now on that TV show, they are in North Carolina, I believe. And at one point, they've already met some of the Indians. And I think even in that TV show, the Indians basically, once Europeans or other people from other countries traveled over, immigrated over in that TV show and took over the land or whatever, the Indians started traveling more up north to like New York State and stuff, even in a TV show or whatever. So I guess, in a way, I guess that makes sense. But still, to me, it doesn't really make that sense because you wouldn't, or I wouldn't think I would want to go someplace, especially in the wintertime, that's going to be colder than what it is in the summertime. I mean, we do get snow and stuff around here. We get all 4 seasons. But for the most part, we don't get like northern type weather. I mean, we kind of do, but not nothing like Alaskan type weather, or Canada, or New York, or Maine, or none of those states type weather. We don't get like, I haven't since my childhood, anyways, got like 3 or 4 feet of snow or nothing like that since I was growing up. We don't get that much snow no more. We haven't in probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. We haven't gotten past 2 to 3 feet of snow. And so we don't get those cold and hard. We do get cold, but we don't get that much percentage of snow is what some of them northern states get to this day. So to me, it still doesn't make, it makes sense, but it don't make sense, if that makes any sense at all. But like according to that TV show, I can't think of the name of it right now. I know y'all know what I'm talking about though. That's a good TV show. It's one of my favorite ones. But anyways, and she just like travels back and forth some way or another from her time periods, and her daughter's able to do it too in that movie or TV show, and so is her son-in-law and her grandson. But anyways, and Fraser is the last name of um her husband in the TV show, one of her husbands in the TV show. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. I just can't think of the name of it right now for some reason. But anyways, and she's like a doctor. But yeah, the Indians on that TV show, they all migrate up north to northern states, especially like New York State. And I just don't know how whoever does that stuff, I guess it's geologists or people who study history. I don't know how they come to understand and know stuff like that, but must be true. there's my cat Nacho trying to use the bathroom. And there's my little Puffy, or my little Stardust, just sleeping away. And poor Feller, look at him and his poor legs, which he is healing and he is getting better, a whole lot better than he used to be. And so yeah, I don't know too much about this land, and I don't know if all that's true, but I think that's true. And I have heard that my uncle has before, and I think that my dad has before, felt like arrowheads over in the bottom where they have their gardens at now. So must be something to it. And I just don't know how it all came about or nothing. I think here in eastern Kentucky and probably East Tennessee and stuff, northern, eastern or western North Carolina is probably mostly what you would call the either Chickasaw or the Cherokee Indian, but I'm not really sure. So I know a lot of people around here always bragging or thinking that they got Indian in them and stuff, but whenever they go to take DNA tests or ancestry tests, most of the time it shows up that they don't have none in them or little to none, not enough to count. And I know, like, even with my ex-husband, all the time whenever I was dating him, and I was young, I was like 16 years old when I started dating him. Him and his family always thought they was Cherokee Indians. And then whenever those ancestry test.com tests came out and people started doing them tests and stuff, his sister had took one, and so did my dad. And my cousin that's my dad's brother, my uncle next door to me, his son had took one. Anyways, it showed up some way on the ancestry test that my cousin, my dad's nephew, was like distantly kin or had some kind of relation to my ex's sister that lives over in Pike County. That's where my ex is from Pike County. And their last name is White, like the color, but it's pronounced the other way. Anyways, and it is true, his grandmother's, I think it was her mom, I could be wrong. I don't know a whole lot about their family history, but I've been told a little bit. But anyways, his grandmother's last name, I guess it was her maiden last name, was the last name of Red Blood. I think it was Red Blood. It was the last name of it. But that's not an Indian last name. I forgot what that stood for, but it's not an Indian's last name. But yeah, anyways, on the ancestry thing, back to that, whenever his sister took the ancestry test, I forgot what hers showed up as, but it wasn't Cherokee Indian. It was like some type of European. And then I actually took a DNA test or whatever at one point in time back. I think that was around like 2016, whenever all that stuff started becoming popular. But I didn't do the ancestry one. I think I did 1, 2, 3, and me or something. Mine was a different one, so it didn't show up on the same one as my dad's or like his sisters did or anyone else's. But mine mostly showed up as like up in the upper 90s percentage of Western European. And I think that his sister's was like Eastern European. I could be wrong though. Was her highest percentage. But anyways, she was connected on Ancestry.com to my cousin on my dad's side that his dad lives next door to me. So, in other words, I think through the Caudles, I could be wrong, even though they're Adamses, the ADAMS ones. Anyways, and I always kind of wondered too why, where that last name came from, Adams. I mean, obviously, I believe in the Bible, and I kind of wonder if it has ties to Adam, Adam and Eve from the Bible. I could be wrong though. I just kind of wonder. Or maybe Abraham. I don't know. I don't know. I know myself. I just kind of wonder how we're all connected, because I know we all are connected in some shape or form. But I never did want to be like incest growing up. I always made fun of my parents because my mom didn't have to change her last name whenever she got married to my dad. And it was just like a childish thing to do whenever I was growing up. And that's just how children are or whatever. But me and my sibling would make fun of her because of that. And, anyways, and she would always claim that they were like third or fourth cousins. I don't know. And she'd say it wasn't enough to count. I don't know. But, anyways, so when I found that out that year, that his sister was like distantly kin to my cousin, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like dying inside because all when I was young and stuff and growing up, one of my whole things whenever I was searching for a partner or a husband was didn't want to marry someone I was kin to, because if you know, you know. I mean, like, I'm kin, probably not as much nowadays as what it used to be back in my time period, about 40 some years ago when I was growing up. But I'm kin to, like, distantly in some shape or form pretty much everybody in Letcher County on some ways. So I did not want to be kin to the person that I was going to marry or anything. So I went to a county over, and I've always joked around since I found that out. Maybe I didn't go further enough because uh, maybe I should have skipped in between and went another county or state over, because obviously I think me and him would probably be about 30 some cousins together, which I know that's not enough to count, but still, it's too close to kin for me. Anyways, what's done is done. And I think another thing, too, on his family's side, over in Pike County, where he's from, that's Hatfield and McCoy country, even though their last name is White, like the color. And I think he shares um, an ancestor. I think that they called him Devil. Devil, I could be wrong on what his first name was, but I'm pretty sure they called him Devil. I think it was either White or Wright, and he had I think he was the mayor around Dorton, Kentucky, or might have been the whole city or town of Pikeville. I'm not really sure. I think his name was Devil John Wright, but I could be wrong. But I think he had like over 100 kids himself. So it's untelling how many people was kin to him. I think half of Pike County was kin to him. And some way or another, I think that my ex and his family are kin to that Devil John Wright guy, or John White guy. But anyways, I think he was a real mean dude too, from what I've been told. And I think on another side, like his mother's side, his mother's maiden name was Wright, Wright. And I think most of her family came from Missouri, out in the Midwestern part of the United States. And I'm pretty sure his grandmother migrated from Missouri, and she's called Misery, but I guess because it's miserable or whatever. But I think I'm not positive. I don't want to say nothing against nobody or nothing if I ain't right. But I think that she said that later on, because I did interview her or I had like a conversation with her one time many years ago before she passed away. After I was trying to find out their family history, and I had all this wrote down in the back. That's the only thing I had with me. I was on the phone with her, but I had all this wrote down in the back of one of the Bibles that I used to own, but I don't have that no more. But anyways, and she told me like everything, and she told me like the meaning of the reason why that they had that last name Red Blood, and they always thought it was Indian and stuff like that, but I don't think it was because of that. But a lot of their family was from Missouri, and she said at one point in time she called it Misery, I believe, and she was a real nice, sweet woman in their family or whatever. And she told me that she kind of regretted it, is what she told me one time when I was on the phone with her, when I was questioning her about their family history and stuff. I think she kind of regretted it that she moved from Missouri to Kentucky. But she got married and had children, and so that's why she moved and migrated. And that's usually how it worked or whatever. But I'll get off here. I'm sorry for keeping y'all on here so long, and maybe I'll tell you more later. But for now, that's all I'm going to tell you about this area of Black Bottom Road here. But yeah, my maiden last name is Adams, Adams, and there was in my mom's family, one of her brothers, her oldest brother, I believe he was. He moved up to Ohio at one point in time, and he moved up there to work back whenever they called it the Rust, or I think they still call it the Rust Belt, but there used to be a lot of job opportunities, and so in factories and stuff. And so he moved up to there in Ohio. I don't know what part, but I know her mom, my mom's mom, my grandmother, on that side, she was from a place called, I think it's pronounced Ironton, Ohio. And so it sits like on the Cincinnati, Kentucky River. And that's where my grandmother's mother was from. And then I think that they migrated a little bit back and forth because they got married to people, I guess their husbands, in this part of eastern Kentucky. And for different reasons, I guess back then it was the coal mining that was booming and stuff. And I think my dad's dad did work in the coal mines for a little while, but I don't know how long he worked in the coal mines. I'm pretty sure my dad worked in the coal mines from the time he was 17 years old when he got married up until 2014 was the year around here that the mines started kind of going down. That's whenever they wanted to start cleaning the coal or whatever, I guess for the environment. And so, anyways, back to my mom's brother, one of my uncles, and she came from a family of 6 girls and 6 boys. And anyways, he was only one of the Adamses that I know of that he always put an extra S in his name. So he spelled his last name Adams, Adamss, when he would, and he changed it to that legally. So I don't know why he done that or anything, but I always remember he would send out every year Christmas cards and letters and buy stationery, and he got saved, and I don't know, he might have even been a preacher. I don't know. I don't know what his life was really like up in Ohio. But I know he would send out every year at Christmas time, he would type out a Christmas letter. and kind of tell a little bit about what had happened with him and his family during that year. And he would always have it on his stationery of his last name as Adams, but with 2 S's. So I don't know why he done that or why he changed it to that. And then obviously too, the Adams Family TV show and movie and all that, ever since that came out, which I don't think that has any ties to, I could be wrong, but I don't think that has any ties to my last name or nothing like that, or my family's last names. But I think that where they do theirs, ADDAMS. I always said I was going to change mine to the Adams Family, just like the TV show and the movies, because I've always been creepy and kind of spooky and called Gookie or Ookie and Kooky and everything else. So, and I do like the Adams Family TV show, movies, I always have. But I'm not going to, I don't think I'm going to, anyways. I don't think I'm going to do that. It's whatever, eventually, if I ever had the money to change my last name, because I don't plan on remarrying or getting a husband. I just don't believe in that right now for myself, or want that right now for myself or anything. But if I ever did, I would like to change my last name though. I went back to my maiden last name, obviously, since I am divorced. I got divorced in 2007. But, anyways, I went back to it some. I'm a ADAMS. I'm a Adams. But I kind of I kind of would like to be a ADDAMS, like the Adams Family Adams, because people's always thought I've been, I don't know, kooky or whatever, crazy out there, the black sheep, the weirdo, the outcast. So, and I kind of like stuff like that. But I don't know if I will or if I won't. Maybe if I ever had the money to do it, I might would. But I think it costs about $500, and I just don't have the extra money to spend to spare. But I might would if I had the money, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what I want my last name to be. That's just something I'd really have to pray about and hope the Creator hears me and answers me and gives me a sign. But I don't want to be an ADAMS because I've never fit in. I've always been the black sheep in my family, and I always know that I know I'm not the golden child. I've been at family reunions before whenever they have flat out told me to my face who my sibling, my brother, he's their golden child, and just make jokes about it. So I know, I've always known that. I've never felt like I fit in with my family or anything. But I don't know what I would want my last name to be or nothing. But I don't plan on getting remarried or marrying a man right now. Or I don't know if I would do it on paper. To me, paperwork legally like that, that's all for society. That's just my opinion, my point of view. It's just all for the system. And it's just not something I necessarily believe in anymore with my age and stuff and different circumstances I've been into. And then another funny story before I get off here with you all. I know I'm sorry keeping y'all on here so long, and I told you I was going to get off here. Back when I was growing up, they had that game called Clue, that board game. And we used to play a lot of board games back in the early 80s when I was growing up. And Clue was one of the board games that we would play. Now, I really didn't know how to play it. I was young and stuff, but I don't know why, but I was always fascinated with Mrs. White from that board game, Clue. And I would always make jokes. Maybe I was speaking it and didn't realize it. Maybe I was speaking it into the atmosphere. But I would always make jokes that I wanted to be Mrs. White from Clue off that board game. And so, they had a Mrs. White, a Professor Plum, and all that. And I would always make jokes and say I wanted to be Mrs. White, and I would always choose, I think, to be her in that board game Clue. So, anyways, I ended up, for a short span of time, I ended up marrying a white man with the last name White, White, like the color, but it's pronounced White. But anyways, and then too, I would always say growing up too, because little girls, or I did anyways, I used to, and probably most people from my time period are females, they probably always fantasized about getting married and stuff. And so, whenever I was growing up, I would always joke around and say, whenever I grow up, I want to live in Montana, and I want to get married to, I thought at the time, this was what my dream was real early on as a real young child. I wanted to either get married to either a cowboy or an Indian, but I wanted him to play baseball, be a professional baseball player. And at the time, I wanted to have a huge farm, like a farm ranch. And I always wanted to live in Montana. I don't know why. I've never been to Montana. That, for whatever reason, that was what's in my dream, in my mind, in my head. And that's the state I wanted to live in. I don't know why. I never really heard much about it or seen many pictures or movies about it, especially back then. And didn't know too much about it. And I've never been to Montana. Whenever I was about 14 years old, my family took a trip. It probably took us about 2 weeks. I'm assuming, I can't really remember. A trip from driving out here in Kentucky out to California, because we had family at the time that lived out in California. And so we drove out west. But we ended up going through Colorado, can't say it, Colorado, or however you say it, Colorado. Anyways, but we never did go to Montana. So I would still, and I do think the out west, from what I've seen of it, is more beautiful than what it is. Everything's beautiful, or can be beautiful, or pretty, or whatever. But it is, to me, it is more beautiful out west than what in those big mountains and stuff. Now, we have mountains out here, and our mountains out here are older than what the mountains are actually, according to history, what they are out west. But to me, they're oceans. Just, I can't make it make sense, but to me, everything's just better. The mountains, the beauty, natural beauty, I don't know, it's just, I wouldn't want to live out there now. Obviously, I wouldn't now, because I'm tied to Eastern Kentucky. I will always be tied till the rest of my life to Eastern Kentucky now, because I have 2 children. And that's something you don't understand. I'll get into in a different video maybe, but once you have children, your world is your children. If you're any kind of a parent at all, if you love your children at all, and that's where your ties is wherever your children are. And so obviously my ties, no matter what, is out here in Kentucky where my children are. And that's where I want to be. But when I was growing up, I always dreamed of and wanted to live out in Montana for some reason. And I always made a joke of it whenever I first got married to my ex-husband, because his family and him, a lot of people do that though, it's just not his family. My family would do that too, especially on my mom's side for some reason. And a lot of people just here in Eastern Kentucky back in my time period would do that too. They would all make these claims before them DNA testing and ancestry kits started coming out. Everybody started taking them. They'd always be they thought of it such high, they got Indian in their blood. They're Indians. And then until they started taking them tests and finding out they don't have no Indian ties or connections at all in their DNA. So, but my ex would always say that he was an Indian. His family would always say that he's an Indian just because he does have dark hair, and if he laid in a tan bed and or he was out in the sun or whatever, he could tan. He could get really dark. And me personally, I've always been more attracted to darker hair and darker skin, darker eyes and stuff like that. He doesn't have dark eyes though. He has like gray looking eyes. But anyways, he he would always claim he was Indian and until his sister took that DNA test, and I don't think she's got much Indian in her. And obviously if she don't have much Indian in her, he ain't gonna have much Indian in him. But I always would say I always wanted to marry an Indian, or that was one of my picks was to marry an Indian. So I always thought I married an Indian. Turns out I didn't. I just married a regular old, well, probably European, English spoken American, or whatever you want to call it. We just white folk, whatever. But I mean, I would still love to someday go out west or go to like Montana just to see it and stuff. But I don't think, even if I didn't have children or whatever, which I mean, obviously I would never want that because I love my children. But I don't think I would ever, now in my age and because I have disabilities and stuff, I don't think I would like to live in a place like Montana, even though I've never been there. I think it's a place, like a lot of places, I think it's a place that I would like to visit and see and spend a few days at, like a vacation. But it's nothing that I would want, no matter how beautiful it is, it's nothing I would want it to be at long term because the older I get, I just can't. And I used to love the cold. And don't get me wrong, I love the snow. Like when it first starts snowing, like I've said before in some of my other videos, I like about 3 days of seeing it snow. I think it's beautiful. But after those 3 days, it's just like how I view vacations. I am done with it. I can't handle it. I start getting cabin fever. I don't like being in control. I don't like having no control. I like to be in control. I guess you can call me a narcissist or whatever, but the truth is what it is, and I like having that control. I don't like feeling trapped, and so I don't I don't like that feeling, and I don't like being cold the older I get. I hate freezing. I like to snuggle up. I like to be cozy. I like cozy stuff. I like comfortable stuff. But I don't like being cold. But another thing too, I was going to tell you about why it's on my mind too. My grandpa, he always said, now, I don't know. I think you're. No, this is just my opinion. And this is just what I'm assuming. But I think whenever it comes to your DNA testing kits and stuff, most of your DNA does seem like it comes from your mother, whether you like it or not. Like if you're in my situation, it mostly comes from your mother. But like when my dad took his DNA test, my dad had all kinds of like different areas of DNA, and a lot of his was what you would consider probably more so of the Vikings, because he had all kinds of like DNA from Norway, Scandinavia. I had a little bit of Scandinavia from what I remember in me, but not much. And my oldest daughter had some in her too. But my dad's was like scattered all over the place compared to what my mom's was and what mine was. So I think really, like I said, whether you like it or not, a lot of a person's DNA comes from their mom. you know. So whether you like it or not, it is what it is. But and so whatever your mom's DNA is, I guess it's probably about, I don't even think it's 50-50. I think it's more like 60 or 70%, unfortunately for me. I think it comes from your mom's, and your mom's DNA is what you are. It seems to be, anyways, what I think. And I know what my dad told me a long time ago. He told me that his dad always told him, I guess, that a lot of his family migrated over from like Norway and I guess Norway and places like that, Denmark maybe, and places, Ireland and stuff maybe, I'm assuming. But I know that they did say Norway and stuff whenever they came over here, when they started migrating over here, like his ancestors and stuff. But that's on my dad's family and his side, and that was his dad that told him that. So anyways, I'll get off here, and I'm sorry for keeping y'all so long on here. I appreciate y'all if you've stayed by and watched this. I really, really do appreciate y'all for watching this and staying by, just listening to me rambling on. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks. Bye.